it's not only the pandemic that's going to cause that uncertainty. We're going to have a lot of uncertainty in the future always. And I think it always comes back to, how do you best serve humanity? And once you can answer that question, how do you help people solve some problem? How does it align with what you're trying to do? Then use whatever technology you can to best solve that problem. And it will help you. You will grow, you will be successful, and you will help other people be successful too.
Hello, everybody. We have the pleasure of welcoming Kate O'Neill to our interview series. I'm Rahul from the Engati team. Let's just begin with a very quick introduction of what Engati is. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code chatbot platform available across 14 channels with 25,000 bots created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc.com, TechWord, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, video channel, and Engati Engage podcast, receiving upwards of 300,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest. Kate O'Neill is a strategist and a futurist who is helping business and humanity prepare for change at an exponential scale, such as the emerging tech, big data, climate change, and more. She's the founder and CEO of KO Insights, a strategic consultancy committed to improving the human experience at scale. Kate, with more than 20 years of experience in helping some of the world's leading companies, is an expert strategy consultant, advisor, author, and keynote speaker focused on helping business navigate transformation, digital transformation, and otherwise in a human-centric way, and shaping the meaningful human experiences that will scale into the future. Kate, it's such a pleasure to have you on this show.
It's a pleasure to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's just jump straight up to the first question. So you're a huge believer in the future of humanity. So can you elaborate a little bit more on this?
Yeah, so even though my work, as you mentioned, has been in and around technology for 25 years or more, really my focus has been on humanity and on the human experience and on really understanding what the future is likely to be for certain kinds of experiences in different industries and in different contexts of those experiences. So thinking about retail and thinking about cities and so on. So what I'm a big believer in is the opportunity to use all our resources, especially things like technology, for the good of the future of humanity.
Right. So it's all about like human-centric approach towards everything.
Yeah, and I think so. Even when you think about business is a human construct, right? Like we created business, so there's no reason, right? There's no reason why business at its core can't be no more in touch with a human understanding of what it does in the world and what good it serves. So there's an opportunity for business to be far more human-centric than it is currently, than the way we typically understand it to be. And usually that comes from understanding a sense of purpose or meaning, like why does the business exist and what is it trying to do? And so the opportunity with technology, like chatbot technology, is once you really have a clear understanding of what the business exists to do and why it exists in the first place, then being able to use that technology to amplify that purpose and really get out there and solve that problem in a more efficient way and in a way that actually scales better to meet the demands of humanity and human needs.
Right. That's beautifully put. All right, moving on to the second question. Being a business strategist, what is the one factor that most businesses fail to take into account while crafting customer experiences?
Well, I think in many cases what happens is that businesses start with technology. Like when we think about digital transformation of the human experience or the customer experience, it's often tech-led. Like they'll start by saying, hey, let's use chatbots to solve this problem. And that's not the right way to start. Chatbots may well be part of the solution to the problem, but you have to start from a human-centered approach and what it is you're trying to do, what problem you're trying to solve. So it should be led by the human experience and the context that a person is in when they encounter that experience. It's really funny, before getting on this call to talk with you, I was chatting with an Amazon customer representative, but it started with a chatbot interaction at the beginning of that. It initiated with the chatbot. And the chatbot, I would say, was pretty well designed, because what it was doing was getting really crisp and clear on what problem was I trying to solve. Why was I approaching the customer support function in the first place? And then when it handed off to a representative, it handed off gracefully, and all of my chat history was intact, and the customer representative could quickly come up to speed on what it is that I had already said that I needed done, or what kind of nuance there was in the conversation that needed to be addressed by a human. And then she was able to get the problem resolved and get me back what I needed to have done. So I think that's the thing that we often fail, or businesses often fail to start with, is let's think about what it is that humans are actually trying to accomplish when they interact with our business. And then we can use technologies like chat, to solve those problems efficiently.
Right, exactly. And that's what we at Engati also believe, is that the core of every business is the human being, right? So it's useless if you have a very fancy technology but have humans around it, but it has to be humans and then have technology around the humans. That's what we believe. And
I'm so glad to
exactly
hear that
like
you
you
guys
said.
are oriented that way. That's great.
That's correct. All right. So moving on to the next one. Do you think conversational AI could play an important role in making each other better for humans?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there are many contexts where conversational AI can be helpful in solving human problems at scale. I think of conversational AI as one of the manifestations of the emerging technologies within, machine learning, that is using what we understand about human contexts and human needs and the kinds of sort of problems and issues that people encounter in different kinds of capacities. Maybe the most obvious being the one I just mentioned about the Amazon sort of customer support. If a customer needs some sort of function addressed, like a shipment never arrived, or I need a refund and I can't seem to get the thing to work, or whatever, those
Right.
sort of typical problems, then it makes sense that you begin to address those issues at that automated level. Like, you begin by sorting out the problems into the correct appropriate use of, like, when you finally assign them to a human, that it's a human who actually has the best chance of being able to offer some useful input to the process. But I think that conversational AI really has a fantastic role to play in being able to be that sort of proxy between what we know, what we can do in the machine learning space in terms of drawing insights from human behaviors and what people need, and then the human to human space in terms of servicing one-on-one. And there's a wonderful transition that happens with chatbots and conversational AI in general, of being able to go from that machine learning kind of pattern recognition and gracefully transition it over to the human to human if that level of interaction becomes necessary. So I think it's a wonderful kind of transitional tech that really can fill a lot of roles once it starts from that human understanding, as we both agree.
Right, that's correct. All right. So, Kate, chatbots are being integrated into the digital transformation strategies of a lot of businesses lately. So, how are they helping improve customer experience as such, or how can they help the enterprises be more customer centric?
Well, I think what's really exciting about the ways that conversational AI and chatbots can bring customer centricity back into the organization is that, like we were just saying, you can sort of start with the general patterns of what you know to be sort of frequently asked questions. Like, if it's a bank, that there's a number of types of interactions that a person will approach the bank for help with. And you can begin those interactions in a structured way that starts to sort of sort out what the problems are. And it brings you some insights, some analytics that you can bring back as to, what are the majority of the cases that we need to solve for when we're sorting out the customer experience. And then it starts to bring you sort of this like decision tree of nuance, like, where does it then go? What are the problems that people have when they're trying to open an account? What happens next? Is the problem that they don't have their identification handy? Is the problem that they don't know their social security number or identification number or whatever? Like, what are the things that need to be addressed, and how can we get ahead of that and prompt people before they begin that process to have everything ready that they're going to need? And then so it's a way of allowing insights to be gathered organically and brought back into the organization so that the organization can then iteratively improve the customer experience and make it more seamless and make the whole process even easier and even more frictionless for the customers.
Right. So what you're saying, it's like a smooth transition and at the same time, very meticulous presentation of data. So it makes decision making very easy for the customer.
Yeah, and I guess I want to throw the question back toward you. What have you seen within Engati in terms of do customers get a lot of value out of? I'm sure there must be rich data insights that people can get about the ways that customers are interacting with chatbots and what that tells employers, what that tells companies about the nuances of what people need outside the organization. Have you been seeing that kind of thing?
Yes, of course. So with Engati, like I mentioned before, it's like the core principle of ours is to keep it as human as possible, right? So if you ask me, I wouldn't like any machine to be nosy to me and like, hey, it's like an automated response. I would not like that. So like we have integrated NLP and a lot of other complex technologies that kind of remember the conversations you had before and take it forward and sentiment analysis, so the bot actually understands what are you talking about, right? And with respect to your conversation you had before. So it's a more humanized approach towards it, so that makes the customer a little more comfortable to interact with the bot, and you get to know the other person very well and thus make the perfect decisions for the customer. So I think
Yeah.
that's one feedback that we're getting lately a lot, that customers are loving about the bot over there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the more you can bring those insights about the customer back into the business, the better you're going to be set up to create this wonderful alignment between what the business is trying to accomplish that makes the business successful and what people outside of the organization that look to the business for product or service are trying to accomplish and how to make them successful at what they're trying to do. So yeah, any
Exactly.
technology that can facilitate that with more nuance, and certainly chatbots can do that. I think that's a wonderful thing to look at with a lot of hope and optimism.
That's correct. Isn't it always better when it's a win-win situation?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So moving on, what role do you believe, Kate, data analytics and AI plays in crafting a human-centric approach to digital transformation?
Well, it's just that, like what we were just talking about, right? It's the idea that what data should really be telling you and what analytics should really be telling you is what people want, what's relevant and what matters to people. And so what's cool there is that if a business is trying to better understand its purpose, and when I say purpose, I talk about purpose in a strategic sense, the thing that a company is trying to do as their mission, as their organizational initiative, and what they're trying to do at scale. So it's not just about we want to help people. Well, everybody wants to help people in some way, or at least I hope most of us do. But it has to be really specific to the niche that the company is in and what they're trying to do at scale with it. So when they understand that, and then they think about how people outside the organization come to them, what they come to them for, data and analytics and AI at the next level of sort of iteration of use of that data and analytics can tell you an awful lot about the insights about how does the purpose of the organization align with what people look to it for. And then once a better sense of what that alignment is and how a relevant offering serves the people outside the organization, then you can use AI, you can use automation, you can use different kinds of these kinds of exponential technologies, the technologies that really bring capacity and scale, to put in place to deploy that purpose, to deploy that sense of here's what we're fulfilling, here's the relevance and the alignment that we're fulfilling, and you amplify that through AI and through other kinds of technologies that get ahead of what's needed there. And then you have people, kind of on the back end of that, who are understanding the nuance and the ways that that's actually fulfilling the need. And you bring that back all through the whole cycle, bring back the data and analytics into insights, and further understand how humans can provide value through the whole system.
Right. Right. That's beautifully put out there.
Thank you.
All right. So Startups or larger established companies, which benefit in the most from AI and modern technology?
I don't know that the difference really comes down to size. I think it seems to be more likely to be determined by whether the company's culture is built around a data informed mindset. So if the C-suite, if the CEO or whatever the leaders of the company or the organization are, if they're accustomed to changing priorities and plans based on new information, not willy-nilly, not just changing plans and priorities all the time, but when new information comes to light, like assessing that information and really rolling it into the understanding that the organization has about what it's trying to do and how it best serves the people that it serves, that kind of company is going to be best suited for the use of AI and these emerging technologies. If it doesn't, I don't think it matters if it's a startup or an established company. The resources for an established company can be easier to kind of afford if it's large scale AI investments. Startups, though, have the advantage of nimbleness and agility, and there are certainly packages like yours that are probably adaptable to whatever size the organization is. It seems to me, and I would love to hear your take on this, what you see most successful in your organizations, that your client organizations. My sense is it must have to do with the agility of the mindset more than it does the size. Is that true?
That's correct. Actually, you hit the right points with your answer. So what we believe is it basically depends on how acceptable your organization is towards new technology like AI chatbot, right? So a lot of these huge companies, they are skeptical about this because they have trust issues with data and all of that. But also when it comes to startups, it's a small organization. It's like a family. You take in decisions quickly, you implement it, and boom, you're there, right? So it also depends upon your acceptability, and also it also depends on the amount of process that it goes through. So when it's a big company, I think you got to talk to person A, then the person A talks to person B, this and that, and there are a lot of formalities. So it takes time, and by then maybe the idea is just it's flattened out, right? So I think, yeah,
Right.
it's about openness also, like towards technology and how fast decisions can be made in the organization.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Right. So, Kate, how can businesses offer better value to customers with technology acting as a catalyst?
Well, I think what we were just talking about in the last question, last piece of conversation was really the same idea, right? I think when you have an organization whose leadership is truly oriented toward uh, being purpose driven, and purpose driven meaning, again, that doesn't mean that it's touchy feely, or that it doesn't make a profit. It's not about not making a profit. It's about making a profit while serving what the company really exists to do and is trying to do, that aligns with what humans need outside of the organization. And so I think there's an interesting approach here. When I speak to operations leaders and IT leaders and so on, one of the conversations that comes up a lot is, what's the best approach to the deployment of automation, intelligent automation? And there's certainly sort of two schools of thought. You could start with a big project, something that is going to make a really big dent, or a big splash, like something that's going to solve a really big problem for the organization. But as you were saying, when you talk about the leadership, if they're not used to this kind of agile approach to technology, it can get bogged down in bureaucracy, and it can get passed back and forth, and then get turned all out of proportion, and then it turns into some Frankenstein monster of what it was originally supposed to be, instead of serving its original purpose. So sometimes it's easier to break off just a little piece of something and deploy something quickly, and identify some small problem that intelligent automation can solve. And then you kind of get your feet wet with it too. You start to understand what's going to be the workflow for this? Like, who needs to be involved in these decisions? Like, who didn't we involve that should have been, the copywriter should have been there earlier, or the interface designer should have been there earlier, or, someone should have been involved in the process at some point. You start to get familiar with that workflow and the handoffs and who's going to need to be part of the decision making at every step. And so I tend to think that that's a way to go, is that, to start small, identify a problem that intelligent automation can solve, but then have grand ambitions too. Start thinking about what those big projects are going to be that you can tackle. But it might be easier not to tackle them until you understand that workflow and the way it's going to go. Do you see that with your best customer successes too, that they may start small, but they work toward big projects eventually?
Yeah, that's actually, I wanted to compliment on the way you answered this, is because it's mostly the mistakes what we have seen organization is trying to take the big leap on the first step itself.
Yeah.
Right. I want to solve the biggest problem in the world. I just want to happen. Like, I want the solution tomorrow. That's not how it works, right? So you got to
Right.
keep your feet down, test the waters, come back, make the analysis, work towards it. It's a step-by-step process, like you mentioned. So that was exactly what I had in mind too, and
Good.
that's what we've been observing too. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's
Good.
a great
I'm
answer.
glad. Well, I'm glad
All
too
right.
to hear from you, as you actually are running a chatbot oriented company, that turns out to be true in your experience, that you're seeing clients actually have more success when they, have those grand ambitions. Like, we want to solve this really big problem, but we know that we have to kind of start small and just get our arms around the technology, and then we can scale it. Then we can, figure out how to make it a bigger part of our organizational deployment. But yeah, that's great to hear
Exactly.
that truly does work that way.
Yes, and also we believe that a victory always prefers the organizations that have the courage to take the first step, right? A lot of these people hold back, and they are so accustomed to the traditional ways that they don't want to step out of their comfort zone, right? For example, a lot of these traditional companies don't want to invest in something like a chatbot, or maybe they're just not ready to kind of accept what the future is holding. So I think that to solve that big problem, you need to take the first step somewhere, or just try to innovate something new in what you're doing. And yeah, that's
Yeah,
the way they do it.
that's
All right,
great.
Kate. Yep, this has been a great conversation. I have one last question left for you. Do you have any other thoughts that you would like to leave our viewers with?
Yeah, thank you. It has been a great conversation. And I guess the last question the last thought I have to leave your viewers with is, I don't know how far into the future someone may be viewing this or listening to it, and how out of date this will sound. But at the moment, as we record this, we're living through this global pandemic. And I think one of the things that really forces us to think about is exponential scale of problems. Like this, we've seen how a pandemic that plays out like this, like truly has the force of exponential growth behind it. And I think when we think about other like emerging technologies, we've been talking about them as exponential technologies for a really long time, as exponential emerging technologies. And I don't think that idea has really sort of taken hold in people's minds in terms of what it means. And so what I think this is a really great opportunity for us to let our minds really process in parallel what exponential really means in terms of change, and to allow ourselves to think about how we best solve human problems, and allow ourselves to start solving those problems in very real, tactical, tangible ways. And like we talked about a few minutes ago, start small, address something that you can do. And at the moment, there's a lot of companies that are really struggling and trying to figure out how they're going to get through the next few months or the year or whatever it's going to be ahead of in this pandemic. But it's not only the pandemic that's going to cause that uncertainty. We're going to have a lot of uncertainty in the future always. And I think it always comes back to, how do you best serve humanity? And once you can answer that question, how do you help people solve some problem? How does it align with what you're trying to do? Then use whatever technology you can to best solve that problem. And it will help you. You will grow, you will be successful, and you will help other people be successful too. I think that's the best thing that any of us can hope for, is that we can be successful and help other people be successful and along with us.
That's correct. That's again like touching on to the win-win situation model like we spoke before. Yes,
Yes.
definitely. Thank you so much for your insights, Kate. This has been amazing. To all the viewers, Engati Engage will be back with another expert and another episode. But hey, those who have stayed so long to the video, we have an exclusive customer experience ebook in the description. Go check that out. It's totally free of cost. Leverage your time and better yourself at whatever you do. Thank you so much, Kate. Can't thank you enough for your insights. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Rahul. Nice to talk with you.